Hello.
Yes,
Hello, Manish.
good morning, sir. Sir, Sushil.
Hello, Sushil.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. I just, it escaped from mind that I have to give a lecture also.
Yes, sir.
Shall I do it now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll share the screen.
Sure, sir.
I cannot share screen. You have to enable me. It is disabled for participant screen.
We are enabling, sir.
No, still not.
Just a minute. Sir, can you share? Yes, sir. Your slides are visible now, sir.
Okay, is it now? Everyone can see my slides, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And at the outset, my apology to everyone that I just missed this, that I have to give a this technical lecture as well. And sometimes it happens then you have too many things, although it is well marked in my agenda. Nevertheless, that I will try to recoup the time and try to share all that what I had planned to talk to all of you about the solid waste management. And one of the concept which has grown much strength over the past 1 decade and is working very well is biorefineries. We have several waste for waste treatment and management, but as I had told you earlier also that waste, the definition of waste is something very interesting, and we know that waste is waste for us, but it has been a boon for people what we call kabadi. They have made their life economically so sound, and we all know that normally they are so rich, and so waste is not waste for somebody's perception may be different for waste, and for somebody it may be waste. So the concept, as I said, that moving from 3 hours to 4 hours, and today we are talking of 5 hours, resource recovery has become one of the key point. In fact, if you look at keyword-based analysis, we understand that when we introduce waste as a major, uh, uh, backbench keyword, then bring sustainability into picture, then resource recovery becomes one of the key parameters or the key aspect, one of the largest aspect for sustainability. So in this lecture, what I'm going to do is briefly introduce you my institutes where I'm working or I have been working, and then give you what scenario, because whenever we talk of sustainability, when we talk of waste treatment, when we talk of all kind of human population, climate change, and life on this planet, the key aspect become energy and environmental sustainability. They are very closely linked, and they are very essential for keeping the life on this planet. So we talk of any aspect of life, whether it is a health sciences, medical sciences, whatever, everywhere we end up on energy and environmental sustainability. If we are not able to, if we would not be able to attain this, any aspect of human life, aquatic life, plant life, whatever we talk about, will not uh, be possible on this planet. So these have become very important. So I will talk more about this aspect, giving you world energy scenario, And then looking at climate change discussions and the commitments given by the national and international government, including the commitment given by the government of India in the sustainability treaty, which we are a party, signed firstly on in Paris Convention in 2015, and then subsequently making it a legal binding on national governments to follow. The treaty was signed on 19th December 2019 in Katowice in Poland, and has come into effect from January 1, 2020. The general bindings have taken 1990 as the baseline for reduction of greenhouse gases emission into environment, primarily carbon dioxide, and that is how a lot of policy interventions changes have been taking place from time to time, and much more during the last 5 years anywhere in the world, and so in our country. And as I said that if there is no clean environment, there will be no sound health, and then there is no sound health, the life will slowly get destroyed. So environment containment is very essential. That means we need to control waste. It could be any kind of waste. We are not talking of just solid waste. We're talking of industrial waste. We know that how hilarious is situation. We talk of industrial waste, industrial effluent. And in fact, while some of you may not like my statement, I often say, if we close the ministry which deal with environment, if we close the State Pollution Control Board, and when we close the Central Pollution Control Board, perhaps the pollution in our country will be far less than what it is today, because we know that how ineffective these are and how big the problem is continuously growing. Whatever it be, leave it there and let us move on to this one. And so energy is a key parameter in order to keep the environment sustainable. And in energy, the most doable, most easily doable sector what government has identified, what all over world the national governments have identified, is the fuel sector, transport sector. Because if you are able to supplement bioethanol into gasoline and biodiesel into diesel, uh, approximately 30% reduction in greenhouse gases emission, that is especially carbon dioxide, could be easily attainable. And that is why all over the world, bioethanol and biodiesel became one of the very important aspect of research and technological development all over the world. We also have been talking just not only biodiesel and bioethanol, what we define, theoretically a second generation biofuel. We have been talking of third generation biofuel, primarily fuels derived, fuels derived from algal cultures. We talk of fourth generation biofuel, that is biohydrogen, and so on. And when we talk of all that, the concept start growing to link it with waste treatment and waste management, and including air pollution, water pollution, and solid waste pollution abatement and control. So more specifically then when you talk of energy environment, and as I mentioned, that energy sector became one of the key. The biofuel, the importance of biofuel start again re-emerging in early 2000, and it appears still to be one of the most promising candidate which can help governments to fulfill the commitment in reducing greenhouse gases emission. For example, Indian government commitment is 30%. It's a global, in fact, it is just not the Indian government, and so on. So I'll talk about biofuel, and then briefly our contribution about lignocellulosic biomass-based biorefinery. So when you talk of biofuel, and when you talk of energy sector, in order to attain economic sustainability, it appeared that it is just not that we focus only one product, that is biofuel, but we need to look at in total holistic treatment so as to go for zero waste generation. That means whatever side streams are generated in one process or one product development, those side streams are normally defined as waste. Those could be feedstock for then another process, and then whatever is generated, that should become the, so ultimately there is practically no zero waste, no waste, it is all zero waste, and we have a clean water generated, clean air generated, and so on. Or even if carbon dioxide is still generated, because we have always will have bioprocesses and chemical processes where carbon dioxide cannot be avoided, relatively its emission will be far more less, and control measure could be still put onto that one. So a couple of slides I'll put on to start with my presentation. A couple of slides on the institutes that I've been working. So this is a CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, which is considered one of the prime research organization and industry for not only basic research but also for industrial research. So I've been working in southwest part of the country, National Institute for Interdisciplinary Science and Technology, which is in city called Trivandrum or Thiruvananthapuram, and this is the place where I established this biotech research and brought the concept of interdisciplinary research between chemical sciences and biotechnology, material sciences and biotechnology, and so on. And over a period of time, when I started to prepare position paper for different government department of Science and Technology, and our own parent organization, CSIR, Department of Biotechnology partly as well. So I brought the concept of biofuel and put not only for R&D, but for its scale up and demo plant. And so we put the Center for Biofuel, such first public sector in India dedicated to biomass to biofuels and chemical, working on biorefinery principle, although first molecule of our interest was bioethanol in particular. So this is the lab on the south, on the bottom side, right side, you see that is the front building, National Institute for Interdisciplinary Science and Technology. And then subsequently, I moved after 30 years to northern part, that is in Lucknow, currently where I am, Indian Institute of Toxicology Research, where I am working in Center for Innovation and Translational Research. The center is a bit different. It does not take up basic R&D projects, but it focuses on prototype development or interface between laboratory research and industrial research. So we work in different modules, working with industries where there could be R&D, RTD partnership, research and technological development partnership. There could be industrial consultancy. There could be IPR sharing. There could be space and facility sharing, and so on. So now I'll move on to the science part of my presentation. So let us have a look on world energy scenario where we stand today. So this slide, what you see is energy consumption between 2015 to 2040. We are somewhere here, 2021. So as you can see that if you divide the world into two blocks, that is OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, and non-OECD, or in other words, generally what we define broadly as developed countries and developing countries. So non-OECD countries are primarily those which are in Asian regions, Latin America and South African continent, that is primarily called as developing countries, or less developed countries, whatever way you would feel comfortable to pronounce them. So as you can see, this is very evident that the energy consumption is rising primarily in non-OECD countries and expected to continue. The pace even would be higher in these countries. So this is very obvious because the industrial development currently is much more focused in Asian countries. Normally we call the growth engine of the world today on industrial front are India and China, although China is far more ahead of India. But then it is just not China and India. A large number of Asian countries and also the countries from Latin American countries, primarily Brazil, and also African countries are developing much faster on industrial front. So as I mentioned, that energy consumption in non-OECD countries continues to increase and is expected to increase 41% between 2015 to 2040, in contrast to 9% increase in OECD countries. So the reasons are very obvious. I've already explained to you. But if you look at that among the non-OECD countries, the growth or the development for energy consumption is again far more higher in Asian countries than the other part of the world, that is the Middle East or the African continent or the Americas, that is primarily Latin American countries, and Europe and Eurasia. So this is taken together, that Europe and Eurasia, what we call the countries which are in between Western Europe and Southern Europe and Asia or Eastern Europe. So in fact, if you look at 1990 level, the energy consumption has increased subsequently in European regions primarily, because the growth has practically stabilized and there is the industrial growth is very, very low further, So this again complements the previous discussion and previous, conclusions, whatever I just mentioned to you. And that summary of those slides again, the previous slide is again shown here. The most important details are shown in the blue font here. This energy demand in non-OECD Asia is projected to increase by 51% during the period 2015 to 40. Remember, the global average of non-OECD was 41%. Okay, but if you take Asia alone, it is even higher than the overall increase. And the smallest projected increase in energy demand is 2% in non-OECD Europe and Eurasia, primarily East European countries. So the question comes that when I talk of energy consumption, that which are the sectors which utilize or where the demand is increasing. So the three most important sectors are buildings, transportation, and industrial. And as could be envisaged, the biggest increase is in industrial sector, because the growth of different kind of chemical industries and all other industries is far more higher than any other part in Asian countries, than any other part of the world. So the most of industrial sector energy use increase occur in non-OECD nations. Industrial sector energy use in non-OECD countries grows by 0.8% per year in the reference case, compared with an increase of 0.2% per year in OECD countries. So from where this energy comes, when we talk of energy and all that, we know that there are fossil fuels which are considered as the most important source, and since last several centuries, they are the one which have been feeding the whole world for energy. So this figure shows you from 1990, we are somewhere here 2021, and then projected till 2040. These are the information given by an International Energy Source, Energy Agency primarily, that is headquarters in France. So petroleum and other liquid, that is will continue to be the major source of energy, till the projected time of 2040. And in fact, today we say that even till 2060, the major source of energy will be petroleum products only. Coal demand is practically seems to be stagnant now, and there could be slight decline in the next 20 years from now for coal demand or the use of coal as a source of energy. This is primarily because the two major big countries, one is USA and the other one is Australia, that they do not want to use coal as the major source of energy. In fact, in last 10 years, the coal uses have completely or almost gone quite low in USA. It is not that they do not want to use the coal, but then they have found the used resources of natural gases, and which is far more, in quantity than their own uses. So natural gases replaced coal in US. They have huge coal reserve, which they are keeping for their future, as source of energy. When natural gas diminishes or is not able to meet their national requirement. And in fact, the huge quantity of natural gases are today being exported by US to neighboring countries and wherever it is possible. So coal, consumption stagnation or slight decrease is linked with many other conditions. Not that coal is not capable of generating use energy or whatever. In fact, when I'm talking of coal, this is important to know that for our country, coal is one of the major source of energy, and it would continue to be major source of energy till at least 2060. But then the very negative, point is that the quality of coal in our country is one of the quite inferior. In fact, the major quantity of coal in our country is quite close to lignite. That means the carbon content is less and the moisture content is very high. That means if we burn coal, we generate more carbon dioxide, more NOx, more SOx, and so on. And overall energy content also is lower than the good quality coal. Whatever it be, let us move forward. So the natural gas is the one which is increasing very rapidly, and the reasons, primarily US, but then many countries have been exploring in last 40 years natural gas as possible source of energy. And in our country also we have quite good successes in southern part and western part of the country, we all know. Then this is the renewables. This is fuel of our interest, what is we are talking. But then if you look at 2005 onwards, when the whole world again started looking at second generation biofuel, it has picked up and likely to grow quite fast to meet the energy requirement or partially replace other fossil fuels. Then we have another source of energy, nuclear, the most clean and most stable form of energy. However, nuclear energy has much to do with the politics of different countries and international politics, taking the name of safety. So I personally very strongly believe that the need for Indian energy could be well met only through energy and environmental sustainability taken into consideration together, is for smaller sector, for rural and sub-rural areas. It is the biogas, which takes into account production of methane and carbon dioxide, and which also takes into account for the treatment of municipal solid waste or agri residues. The second one is obviously solar. Huge efforts are being put, and in fact, if they are implemented very properly, and then solar energy could alone be able to meet more than 60% of domestic requirement, not of industrial requirement. But we know that even in home, we can put solar panel and AC can be run. And then nuclear energy I very strongly support, but then, as I said, that where politics involved, science and scientists, they go down, nobody listens to them. If you take summary from the previous slide, that use of all fuels except coal goes throughout. Petroleum and other liquid remain the largest source of energy, but the share of world market energy will decline from 33% in 2015 to 31% estimated to be 2040. And so there is a slight decline. And it is primarily because we hope to get renewables share increasing. So as in the beginning, I mentioned to you about energy and transport. So these are quite related, and I will not deviate from the main theme of this today's talk, that is energy and environmental sustainability, and would like to talk about biorefineries. But then we know that climate change is a serious issue, and then looking at commitments given by our government and many other national and international government, the focus of the world has moved on transport energy, and which is normally liquid fuel, that is gasoline and diesel. So a lot of work has been done, and some information about how it impacts the environment and so on. 14% of global greenhouse gases emission is caused by the transport sector. 20% of total energy use is by transport sector, and 23% of carbon dioxide emission is alone by this fuel. And that is why that the focus has been on controlling and minimizing this emission. Many other information about which kind of vehicles are available and so on. So petroleum and transport are very closely linked, and 95% of transport energy is from petroleum, 60% petroleum goes for transport fuel. So there have been, development of many other kind of fuel. In particularly, we are hearing a lot about electrical vehicles and so on. So this is very important, and we need to have very, serious consideration onto that one, and keeping into mind that what as an individual we can contribute. When you talk of electricity-driven vehicles, there have been some very frustrating statements by some politician, responsible politician. For example, in 2040 or something like that, France has became one of the first countries which has given its target for replacement of electric vehicle from the conventional ones. And then some other countries have given very cautious statement. Therefore, I jumped one of our ministers and given a statement by 2040 that India will replace completely its fleet of vehicles with electrical vehicles. Not even in dream possible for the people who are in the field, for the scientists and engineers, the people who are in the as knowledge bank and so on. We have to keep into mind the logistic alone. That one of the best vehicle, for example, let me share with you, that is the cars which are there in the market. They require 2021 vehicles. They require charging after a particular time, and the maximum is currently battery life is 5 years. So 5 hours. So we require charging, and even for 85% for small vehicle charging, a minimum time required is 85 minutes. and so on. So do we have charging stations, and will there be charging stations? We are a country having huge area and all that. Today, even we don't have petrol bunks in the interior areas, in the suburban areas in our country. Even if this situation has improved very drastically in last 20 or 25 years, but still, so do we have this kind of facilities? No, to require this kind of facilities, what is the kind of infrastructure required? Do we have this a network of huge facilities? And on the top of everything, do we have this quantity of electricity available? And when this question was asked, the same learned politician answered that yes, we'll produce more electricity, double in quantity. And then when question was asked, how do we produce electricity? He has no clue. We know that I've told you that more than 72% of power in 2022 in our country is thermal power. And I have also shared with you that the quality of coal is one of the most inferior in our country. That means, are we going to generate electricity to provide the charging station by burning more coal, which is of lower quantity? And if you look at system analysis, and if you look at overall techno-economic analysis, will come to know that will produce more carbon dioxide, more NOR and more SOx than whatever we could save by providing electricity for charging these vehicles. So these are the simple things, that where science has no second option, no second view. Whatever it be, there is a growing interest now, and there is a very cautious development taking place in our country also on developing electrically driven vehicles. Another important point here, where the whole world is, that we use lithium batteries so far. There is huge interest growing all over the world about the battery development. We know that lithium is the only material today we know. So material development for energy storage and energy as electrode, etc., is also one of the major sector. But then lithium is limited to a few countries in the whole world, and these countries are primarily into huge trade agreement with China. At one time, we considered China as our friend. At one time, we considered China as one of our, competitor for several aspects, and also one of the security threats we know that we have from our neighborhood. So if we depend, so while raw lithium is available as ore in Ethiopia, for example, in huge quantities and largest quantities, some countries are there in African continent, but then their processing and all that is practically 100% monopoly by Chinese companies. So these are the considerations we have to keep into mind because fuel is also well linked with energy security for the nation. So with all that, there have been emphasis on developing, biofuel, and not from obviously when the national biofuel policy started to develop in 2005. Over a period of time, it took 8 years to come to final conclusion, which of course I had written in my position paper in 2005 itself, 2006-7 itself, that there's no possibility of using any arable land in our country for developing energy crops and so on. And in fact, in that study, when we worked as consultant for India country consultant for International Energy Agency, we concluded that we learned that we are a country where 51% area is under crop cultivation, largest anywhere in the world. And also practically every arable land is under crop cultivation. So these are all considerations which we needed to take into account, and we put our point of view on developing national biofuel policy, where we said that there is no question of any food crop to be used for fuel application. For example, we said that biodiesel is not feasible for India. We are a country who loves to eat as much as possible fried items. So we love to morning itself to eat puri and kachori and all kind of fried items. Now several sweet items, etc. So our even vegetable oil need of our country more than almost 50%, and now we are importing. 20 years before, we were importing 53%, and in 2019, we imported now 46, between 46 to 47%, because there have been huge support on oil mission, although it has been there since 30 years, but then there has been real development taking place on increasing the oil cultivation in our country, but it's still almost half the requirement is met through import. So when there is when vegetable oil is not available for food application, there is no obviously possibility for its uses as fuel. So biodiesel, we said, is not feasible for India, which was not accepted in particular by Department of Biotechnology experts. There have been people, in fact, you might remember that some of you who are senior, that there was in fact a hype about biodiesel in our country in 2008, 9 and 10. And it started because the statement and the details came none from the most respected former President Abdul Kalam, who said that India has 65 million hectares of wasteland, and this wasteland can be used for cultivating crops like jatropha. And there were some pseudoscientists coming from very reputed technological institutes in South, who were, childhood friend of the former president, and who gave him incomplete or even pseudo information. And then static department, we are very fast and very prompt in developing statics in our country. So static department people came with very rosy, very fancy statics that we have this many hectares of land, and jatropha can be cultivated from this many hectares of jatropha. We'll get 1 ton of seeds, and from 1 ton of seeds we can produce this many quantity of oil, which can be converted to this many quantity of biodiesel. So not only that will fulfill the 20% blending target of India, we'll have millions of tons of biodiesel in surplus, which will export and so on. However, our position paper was very clear, and we said, even into India country report to IEA, we said that biodiesel is not feasible for India, and we gave the reason, all that what I shared with you. However, there have been people who did not like this kind of statement, but ultimately in 2009, first time biodiesel policy reconsideration started, and 2013, the Department of Biotechnology, which is the lead on developing national biofuel policy, withdrew the biodiesel from the basket of fuels in our country. So there's a situation, because there's no question of food versus fuel controversy and cost and so on. And an important point, I've been talking to you about the word sustainability. An important point is there that in today's time, we cannot work in isolation. The whole world is one, and carbon dioxide, for example, is not a issue for a village, and for that matter, not of a country. It's a global, because the environment is together. It is not, while there are physical boundaries of nations, in the sky, there is no such boundaries. And carbon dioxide, it is nothing that if I produce, you will not be impacted. Everybody will be impacted. So global, environment cannot be in two sectors. So from that point of view, let me also share with you, Manish, how much time I have more? Sushil, Manish, anyone? I think they all have disappeared.
No, sir, we are here only. Actually, the mic was muted. Sir,
So
you have time left, sir.
How much time?
Sir, approx for 20 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. So let me also share you one very interesting story about the sustainability. Because again, sustainability is not in isolation to be considered. It's not that sustainability for India is different and sustainability of India will not impact the other part of the world. In certain sectors, yes, being sovereign countries, we have our national policies and our own rules and regulations. But then in isolation, a country cannot remain. Malaysia and Indonesia are the two countries which produce 70% of palm oil required for the whole world, and they export the largest quantity of this is exported by these countries to different countries. India also imports, but a small quantity, but the largest share is in Europe, and in Europe this palm oil is used for making biodiesel. And since it has been a revenue earner crop, more and more farmers and the national supported by the national policies of these two governments started removing the forest and cultivating more and more oil palm crop. And also, in order to get higher productivities, started to use indiscriminately water and fertilizer. Now, deforestation is a global issue. We know that fresh water availability is less and less. The whole world is hugely water stressed, and there are 17 countries which are, in red zone, including, for example, India. And then we all also know that there are very bad consequences of indiscriminate use of inorganic fertilizer. We are facing today, the whole country, the soil scientists, etc. If you talk to them, they will tell that how bad is the health of soil in our country. In fact, soil organic carbon content in Indian soil is the lowest in comparison to all over the world. No, we had the fruits of green revolution. We became from begging bowls to exporting bowl, but today we know that we are already facing very severe consequences, and the food platter provider of a state of our country, that's Punjab, water table 40 years before, 50 years before was generally about 30 feet down, and 1970 it was 15 feet down. Then today it has gone from 100 to 300 feet down. That means we are exploiting huge unsustainable quantities of water. So whatever it be, so Korea, the European Union considered that sustainability issue, and according to their regulation, they decided to not import any more palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia, citing sustainability issue due to deforestation, indiscriminate use of water, and inorganic fertilizer. So now these two countries are, sovereign countries, independent countries, but they couldn't do anything. There have been a very hectic lobbying and all that, but somehow or other, finally, this regulation has come into effect by European countries, and each nation has a quota to reduce every year import of palm oil from these two countries and stop it completely in 2030. 10% reduction each year from 2020 to 2030 and reduce completely. So sustainability is such a key, and it is very important and relevant globally, and no country can say that we would do whatever we want to do. So now the last part about the biofuel, that how this has been growing. And so as you can see that 2016 share of biofuel and transport was very meager. But then when you take of previous 10 years, the growth has been approximately 11.4%, and it is likely to continue the same pace. And from where we get this biofuel, vegetable oil for biodiesel, and But then, as I said, that there are many countries, European countries, US, etc., where even all kind of edible oil are converted to biodiesel. But for country like ours, there is no question of using any vegetable oil, and the Jatropha, etc., are practically completely ruled out. So we have no biodiesel. So the country has primarily focused on bioethanol. Bioethanol word has been primarily used for the one derived from lignocellulose biomass. So we produce from molasses primarily. What you see is a global scenario, and because again Europe produces substantial quantity of ethanol from corn, and so is US, because these are surplus crops in these countries. But then the interest of current discussion globally is lignocellulosic biomass, which was a very small quantity in, about 10 years before. So there also have been many issues, and when discussions take place on global perspective, the scenario changes. For example, shortage of feedstock has been one of the points which has been discussed very hugely when climate change discussions are going on, and biofuel, implementation of biofuel or production of biofuel was discussed, and more so by the task force of International Energy Agency. But then countries in tropics or countries which are in Asia, Africa, and South America, or countries which are considered less developed or developing countries, they have one advantage here because they have a lot of tropical crops, and residues generated by these tropical crops could be well utilized for making, fuels and chemicals. So we have been talking about bioethanol from crop residues, and if we are able to implement it in a feasible manner, then we know that we can save a lot of environmental pollution itself, because in the western part of the country, in particular Punjab and western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, and some part of Gujarat, where cotton is cultivation, and south central Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, etc., where cotton crop is there. So different kind of feedstocks are there, crops are there, and the residues are there, which are of no value, and often they are even burned directly by the farmers because they do not have land available for their storage. So that causes environmental pollution, and also we lose organic carbon, etc. So this is a shortage of feedstock is again from region to region, country to country, it changes. Low carbon dioxide reduction effect, because the studies have been conducted primarily on transport sector. And then there have been discussion about, again, the people who oppose, there is a big lobby, petroleum lobby, which opposes biofuel. So these are the points given by the petroleum lobby primarily. They say that blending limits, so indeed there are blending limits, because what we're talking today is without changing the design of engine, so that there's no additional cost for using biofuel, and that is how 10% is considered ideal for gasoline or petrol, what you call in our country, and 20% for biodiesel without changing any design of engine. But we know that researches in our engine research in our country has clearly shown that up to 20% ethanol can be changed, can be supplemented, and we would need to change only some supply tubes, not the engine design. Also, one weak point was mentioned that it's only for road sector, but there have been, many studies found that it could be used for different other applications. But if you look at overall biofuel or fuel, different kind of research is going on, developing advanced biofuel for multiple application, as even jet fuel and all that. We can see that focuses on carbon dioxide utilization. We generate plants, utilize them to develop grains, and then whatever is left out is lignocellulose, that is the feedstock. And we are talking of carbon dioxide utilization of biological biomass, carbon dioxide which comes from different waste resources, so that we could carbon dioxide from thermal power plant, carbon dioxide from other resources, distilleries, etc., which could be utilized by algal biomass. And for our country, we do not intend to use fresh water because fresh water is a big issue in our country. So can we go for marine resources, marine water utilization? And the focus is to develop intermediate compounds, and then finally using biological processes or thermochemical processes, different kind of bioalcohols, BTL, renewable diesel, electrofuels, etc. And one another important aspect which is growing very solid shape is in our country is methanol economy. In fact, there are big groups working on methanol economy in our country, taking lignocellulose biomass as a feedstock and going through thermochemical platform. So where we stand in terms of technology readiness level of these fuels. So as you can see, in terms of technology readiness, it is lignocellulose ethanol is ready for commercialization, but there are issues, in particularly economic consideration, which inhibit its utilization at large scale. But then this need to be linked with environmental sustainability and government regulations policies. There are changes taking place today. There are a lot of incentives being provided by the government, but I always feel that incentives, in particularly that in terms of government support prices, are not the one which will ultimately be acceptable by the market. The market must work on a free economy, and everyone has to compete there in order to find a place. So lignocellulosic ethanol, for example, in our country, there is a ethanol which is primarily produced in our country is from molasses, and the ethanol price from lignocellulose resources also has been put at the same price by the government, more or less same price, which is not economically sustainable. So I will not go into, because again, we would need a long time to discuss pros and cons of this one and what kind of policy interventions are needed by our government onto that one. So while technically it is well proven, of course, there are always rooms and possibilities to improve the feasibility, productivity, titles, yields, and to attain more and more energy savings and all that. But it is not working still feasibly, taking into account the current price structure put by the government. We have seen gas fermentation moving very fast. And as I said to you about methanol economy, where there is a well-proven technological development and technology available in our country, but again, it is not feasible, taking into account the cost or the price structure of fuel from petroleum resources, whatever we have in our country. This is again the same slide talking about the cost, etc. So as I said to you, that algal biofuel does not seem feasible. That we need to have well-loaded products. That is biorefinery we need to establish so as to derive some high-value product, nutraceuticals, etc. So as to compensate the low cost of biodiesel which is produced by algal resources, and then put an integrated plant where the price structure is compensated by one product for other product. First generation ethanol is in green level, but the cellulosic ethanol is at higher level. And look at Fischer-Tropsch synthesis for advanced biofuel or methanol, again are at higher level. But over a period of time, with the growing intervention, technological interventions and policy interventions, things are improving, and hopefully in a near future, this all will not only be technically feasible, but also techno-economically sustainable. Some information about CAPEX and APEX, etc. I will leave with this slide. Again, investment is intensity, it is quite low in second generation biofuel, bioethanol, primarily because the risks are quite high. There is no angel funding available, for example. So all that. So we have been working, as I mentioned to you, that we were the first in our country to start working on biorefinery, biomass-based refinery. We had mapped the whole country for available of different crops and fixed their utilization pattern currently so as to determine what is available as surplus, because that surplus only can find a place for alternative application. So this is a general overview or outlay of biorefinery process which I have developed. Biomass, we have mapped 6 biomass are different part of the country, that sorghum biomass or cotton plant biomass. The most common is rice straw, for example. It is to be treated to deconstruct cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Cellulose is to be hydrolyzed to get C6 fermentation, that to be fermented not only to make ethanol but also to high value product. It is very well shown, proven, for example, that if you produce a high value product, an example is shown, already adopted by one refinery in Germany. 20% of sugar is utilized for making L-lactic acid, and the price compensation goes for support price for ethanol. Lignin, today we are talking again as not only basic resources for chemicals, but today very strong efforts are there on developing lignin-based biorefinery. Enzyme, we always support the production of on-site enzyme so that there is less expenditure or no expenditure on their recovery. And C5, whatever we get from the biomass, xylose, arabinose, rich sugars, they should be fermented again to make high value products so as to get some compensation for the cost of ethanol. All the whatever coming from wastewater coming from different processing steps to be put together, and algal culture to cultivate onto that one based on the biomass composition, in particular for the lipid profile. If it is rich in nutraceutical, could be taken for nutraceutical development, and remaining biomass to be developed for biochar. So biochar again goes back for environmental applications, back to soil as conditioner, or utilized as a slow release fertilizer system, or to modify on surface and utilize for wastewater remediation. So that is the entire concept of biorefinery which we put into place, and we adopted. We successfully showed at different level of operation from laboratory to prototype and the pilot plant that this is doable. This is timeline, time structure or chemical layout of the plant, that biorefinery plant. What I mentioned to you, that different kind of protocol or reactor to utilize that microalgae, reservoir pond or open photobioreactor, and to develop algal bile, and that algal oil extracted biomass to produce biochar. These are the few photographs of pilot plant which we have, and this is a photograph of pilot plant for producing enzyme. And pilot plant finally. So I'd like to thank all of you for your hearing, and of course in the process last several years, more than a decade, we have been supported by many industries, many government departments, etc., as a funder or as collaborators. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for gracing the FDP with the commencement talk. If any of the participants have any questions to Professor Ashok Pandey, sir, can unmute himself or herself and can ask. Any questions from the participants? Participants can unmute themselves and can ask the questions directly to sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You are.
please.
Sir, myself Nitin from SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Kattankultur, Chennai.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question regarding if we take lignocellulosic biomass, what is the better outcome from this lignocellulosic biomass? Means production of ethanol or production of methane?
It is, it has nothing to do what is better. It becomes what is the target. The target is more important. If the target is to produce gaseous fuel, if the target is to produce methane, then you should look for anaerobic process. And obviously, lignocellulosic biomass alone is not a suitable feedstock. You have to look at process development, co-digestion, where a part of lignocellulosic biomass, currently, ideally, what we know is something like 20%. It can go up to little higher also, but most of the process, whatever we know today, define 20% as an ideal, that is a cow dung based anaerobic process, where 20% feedstock, rice straw, or could be supplemented. And such supplementation usually increases not only the kinetic, that is rate of gas formation, but also depends upon if you are able to control or modulate the conditions, then could increase the methane content also into biogas.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any
Hello,
more
sir.
questions from the participants?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, please.
Yes, sir. So I'm Vidyabharati from Tamil Nadu Agricultural University. So I have a question on hydrothermal liquefaction of lignocellulosic biomass. So can you give us what is the status of that kind of research in India, sir?
There is huge work going on hydrothermal treatment, in particular, if the aim is to develop biochar particularly. And of course, in the process, you also generate bio-oil. That bio-oil could be utilized as feedstock for syngas fermentation or many other application. So there are a large number of institutes, including, for example, in neighborhood, you have Calicut, NIT Calicut, people are doing on hydrothermal pretreatment. The leaders are in CSIR Institute, that is Indian Institute of Petroleum, then Institute of Chemical Technology in Hyderabad. And even ISC Bangalore, which is also close to your place, TNU, I'm not sure if anyone in TNU is working seriously on hydrothermal processes, but then many agriculture universities, for example, GB Pant University, there is a group strongly working on hydrothermal treatment or other thermochemical process, for example, pyrolysis or even combustion, of different kind of agri-crop residues for making biofuels or biofuel additives. You can directly go for even making different kind of additives. We know that lignite is one of the most important product, or furfural, 5-hydroxymethyl furfural, which is key today for as chemical building block. So these all can be developed using different kind of physico-chemical process.
Thank you for the information, sir.
Hello.
Good morning, sir. Hello.
Yes, please.
This is Kamalasan from SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai, sir. So our Indian scientists, we are doing a lot of research in laboratory scale for biofuel production from biomass, but still we are lagging to scale up the industrial process. What is the reason what is the technology missing to scale up the process? Technology or cost is a very factor?
There are, I'm not sure if you had been listening to my entire presentation. Time and again, I said that the technological development has reached to a good level. It is always possible to keep improving in terms of efficiency of deconstruction, efficiency of pre-treatment, hydrolysis efficiency, etc. So technological improvements are always possible. Primarily,
Sir, no voice coming, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, I hear you. Please.
Yeah, because somebody else also started talking in between, so that maybe some Arpit Kumar or someone. So you have to wait till one person's question is over or my response is over. Then only somebody should take the permission from Sushil or the organizer and then speak. Not that each of you start speaking simultaneously together, because your online mode there will be, not possible that more than one people speak together. There will be echo and problem of listening to or hearing to the response. So it is essentially techno-economical challenges. And as I said to you that we did yeah, so I was also muted. So techno-economic, it is primarily the economic, reason, and scale up have been done for example, for ethanol, many places, many industries. Praj industry is one of the such which has claimed that demo plant, pre-commercial plant. So not that there are not nothing has been done. A lot has been done. A lot has been developed, and even for example, if you are in Chennai, not far away from Thiruvananthapuram, you can contact them, seek their time and approve permission, and can go visit the plant, which is a working plant in Trivandrum. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You can unmute Arpit Kumar Shukla or something like that, Sushil.
Arpit, do you have any question, Dr. Arpit?
No, sir. My voice is not clearly coming, so I say no voice coming.
All right.
Okay,
So
okay.
we are short with the time and we are running out of time for the second session.
Sushil, you allow Asutosh to ask one question.
Yes,
He's
sir.
raising his hand since so long.
Ashutosh, yeah, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, sir. You delivered a very nice lecture on the fuels. I just want to know about the hydrogen. What is the future perspective of hydrogen in India?
It's not only in India, Ashutosh, anywhere in the world. The biohydrogen or hydrogen is the most clean form of energy and perhaps the most dependent. The issue is today that we do not have capacity to compress hydrogen. That means today, for example, if you want to travel from 500 kilometers using your car with hydrogen as the fuel, behind you, you will require 2 or 3 tankers of hydrogen with your car. Because hydrogen cannot be compressed, you know that it becomes then technology is different to make only hydrogen bomb. Otherwise, so there is a huge effort going on globally on developing hydrogen storage material. The day we will succeed onto that one, then every fuel will become useless. Because it does not make any, it's zero pollution, it's the most dependable and most clean form of energy. So a lot of work is going on anywhere in the world, including our country. Several IITs, several CSIR institutes, and many universities, many private organizations, including this automobile manufacturer, whichever places they have their own R&D. Because it will be completely game changer for the transport sector particularly.
Yes, Professor. Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
Thanking you, sir. Again, sir. Our AITH family is very thankful to you for giving us your precious time. Now we will move on to our next session, which is
So I can leave now, Sushil?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Once again, sorry that I missed to join immediately after the opening session. Thank you.